Awesome. And welcome everybody. Thank you all so much for coming to our meetup today. My name is Amelia. In case you don't know me, we have a few topics that we'll be covering today. Few quick things. If you could go ahead and either rename yourself in the participant list with your first name, last name, and library, or put it in the chat box so that I can have a record of who is attending and enter that into Aspen, that would be great. For teachers who are on the call, if you would like OPI credit, that is available. You can just email me at, I'm going to put my email into the chat box, and I can provide that for you. And this is being recorded and it will be uploaded to Vimeo maybe today, probably tomorrow, and then sent out on Wired for everyone to see. So our agenda for today, we're going to talk about Gianforte's mask mandate repeal, which happened, I think, on the 12th last week. So we'll talk a little bit about that, maybe have some time for you all to share and ask any questions that you have. We'll talk about vaccine availability and also general vaccine information in terms of what's out there and where can people find information about that. I don't know if you all saw the email, but the Realm study round 7 and 8 results were released. So I'll talk a little bit about that, and you can check out the results for yourself and see what they've been looking into. And then there's just a quick chat about post-pandemic space planning. There's an article from Medium that talks a little bit about what to do after the COVID pandemic, which is a time that is slowly but surely coming upon us. So just things to start considering for that eventual transition as well. And of course, if you have any other topics or questions or anything at any point that you'd like to bring up, please let us know. I will be monitoring the chat box for questions and comments and bringing that to everybody's attention. But you're also welcome to unmute yourself if you would like and you feel comfortable with that. So the first thing that we're going to do is our 3 deep breaths. I put a picture of feet in front of a fire because, you know, everyone could deal with some cozy vibes after the crazy cold snap we had. So if you just want to sit up straight, make sure that your shoulders are kind of back. And if you want to do cactus arms, you can do cactus arms. If you just want to put them on your legs, that's also totally fine. But make sure to just breathe deep into your belly, and we'll do 3 deep breaths. So inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. And exhale. Awesome. Okay, so first topic of conversation is Governor Gianforte's mask mandate repeal. I have a few links on here that I want to share with you. These are just, I mean, there's a bunch of articles out there talking about this, which you can definitely look into. I just included a couple, the one from Montana Free Press and the Great Falls Tribune, because I thought they gave good overarching overviews of the decision. The Great Falls Tribune one has some like specific, what does this mean for Cascade County? But it also has just general, like, what does this mean for folks? So even though it is kind of specific to a location, it also has some, sorry, my cat's here. It has some good information just for general awareness. And then I also included the link to the actual text of the February directive. So I would just recommend reading that so that you know exactly what's covered on there. And Pocky, can you stop that? So that you can have that available in case you need to reference it. So let me go ahead and put those links into the chat box. I'm also going to stop my video real quick because my cat is causing a bunch of issues. But if you have any questions or comments, the main thing, as you know, is that the statewide mandate has been repealed, and Governor Gianforte has he has himself said that he is planning on continuing to wear a mask, and he has encouraged that. But has said that individual responsibility and personal responsibility is the way to go. So if you have any questions about that, please feel free to put that into the chat box. I think Tracy had sent an email earlier on Wired, or maybe this was actually just a conversation we had in our team's meeting. So feel free
I
to
sent
correct
it
me
to
on
the
that.
public library directors.
Oh, okay. I was like, wait, did that happen or not? But talking about, you all as libraries have the ability and authority through your board to enact uh, mask policies. And also a lot of counties and local health departments have enacted mask policies. So if you're not sure exactly what is going on, I would recommend talking to your local health department, seeing what other businesses and organizations in your community are doing, but just be aware that you do have the authority to do that in your library. So let me go ahead and put these links into the chat box, and then I'll see if there are any questions. But if anyone else from the state library also wants to chime in, feel free. Okay, and I'll turn my video back on because my cat is...
Our director just put out a notice on Facebook of why we are staying with the mask policy that we have.
Mhm.
Um, so it is available out there on imagineiflibraries.org
Awesome,
and
thanks for
on
sharing.
her Facebook.
Yeah, and yeah, that's probably a good idea to let people know what your policy is. I've seen that for a bunch of businesses here in Helena, who have decided to explicitly say that a mask is required for coming into the store. And from what I've seen, a lot of businesses in Helena, at least, are still requiring a mask for anyone who comes in. So yeah, you can take a look at the one from Imagine If, as Jennifer just brought our attention to, or you can also look at other businesses around you and see what language people are using. Joey says the City of Whitefish and the Whitefish Community Library will continue to require masks. Pam says same in Bozeman. And Velociraptor Prime, aka Kara Orban, says our county health department still requires masks, I believe. Yes, so there's already, if you're looking at different articles about the mask mandate in Montana, some articles have included a list of counties who have already enacted a mask mandate in their jurisdictions. So you can take a look at that. Valerie says Blaine County commissioners are requiring them in county buildings.
Well, and then there is the federal mandate that you have to wear masks. Like you're supposed to wear them in Glacier Park. I don't know how many people are, but
Yeah, so there is also that as well. And again, even if your county or town is not requiring it, your library can. So just know that that is always an option.
This is Tracy, and I would just say I do recognize, and I said this to the public library directors, this is an emotional issue, I think. And so if you just need to like brainstorm strategies, Pam, Suzanne, and I are happy to listen and chat with you about that, because I know each individual community is different. Some of you live in communities where it's perfectly okay to mandate masks, and others of you might live in communities where that's very tricky, especially if your county commissioners or your city isn't requiring masks. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us, and we'll do some brainstorming together to try and figure out how to manage it.
Awesome. Thanks, Tracy. A couple more comments from the chat. Martha says, the Imagine If letter is speaking to concerns in our area about freedom of choice and personal rights and how we are protecting people's access to the library by requiring masks, even though we know not everyone agrees. So thanks, Martha, for describing the letter in more detail, which, you know, if it is a little bit tricky in your area to broach a kind of emotional topic, that might be a great way to do so. And Sandra says, or if you have branches, it is tricky, which is also another point. And I know that doesn't necessarily apply to everybody, but there are some library systems that have different branches. Any questions, comments, challenges, discussions that people are having so far about this? I know this is still fairly recent, in the last week, so maybe you all are still considering what the best course of action is. But there's a great group of folks on the call today, so if you would like to brainstorm anything, feel free to bring that up to folks. No, let's see something in the chat. Denise says, it is tricky here. Ravalli County area is very anti-masks. Our board were one of the first to have a mask mandate and we got backlash. And Denise, I don't think you're alone in that. And perhaps for, especially since the statewide mandate has been repealed, maybe that is kind of a roadblock for some places that would like to enact a mask policy. But the backlash is also something that's very real, and very much a challenge, I think. So Denise, are you still, is your library still having the mask requirement? And
Well, we haven't had a meeting yet. Tomorrow's the board meeting. I just sent an email to the board telling them, you know, that because of the Gianforte that we should probably reiterate our mask policy, but it seemed there was a little mixed, there's a little bit of a mixture from some of the staff board that responded to me, but the county definitely will not do anything.
And that's really tricky too. And I don't know also, and maybe Tracy, Suzanne, and Pam, you all have more of a sense of this, but I don't know if like local health departments might be a resource for this. Perhaps not if they're not able to enact a countywide.
No, not ours, because they won't get support from the county. So therefore, they've just been, all they do is they say they recommend masks, but they've never taken any type of enforcement because they can't take any enforcement because they don't have any backup and because the police won't back them up or anything like that.
That is really tricky.
I am curious because I think some libraries may think about this as instead of having it be mandatory, have it be recommended, and maybe trying to use language and stuff, probably like what Connie Behe from Imagine If is going to be doing in her letter. So we might be able to use some of that same language. It's just kind of focusing on protecting other people. It's not, and the reason I say I'm wondering if in these counties where it's just there's a lot of anti-mask sentiment, I'm wondering if moving to recommended versus required would work better. I really don't know. I'm actually thinking out loud, Denise. I freely admit that to everyone on here. I'm just trying to think about how to manage this so that you don't have people screaming at your staff. You know, I mean, if you only have a couple people, who might violate the rule. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Well, we have people on staff that wouldn't feel safe if we didn't have a mask policy because they are at risk. And right now, because we take enough precautions, they're okay with coming to work. I mean, I already actually lost some staff during COVID because they resigned. But I don't really want to lose other other people based on it, and I want them to be able to be in the building and feel safe. If we
Yes.
if we recommended it, a lot of people would not come. I would say the majority of people, at least half, let's just say half, would come in without masks. I'm guessing. And though there's a lot of older patrons though that say they appreciate the masks policy and that and they're glad that we have it. So I feel like not only protecting staff, but we're protecting other patrons by having the mask policy, of course. So I don't really want to go to recommend it at all. Because I mean, we've had the people that are some of the people that are really anti-mask that even took out a billboard. So we have a billboard on the highway. So somebody actually, I was like, wow, they had to pay a huge amount of money to have a billboard made that says, you know, I forget exactly what it says. It's an anti-mask one that says, you know, I won't be masked and you're taking away my freedom or something like that, you know, along those lines. I mean, that's not verbatim at all. It's just the sentiment on it. And actually there was people that actually went to the county meetings that they came to our library meetings too, but they also went to the county meetings and said, it's not my job to take care of other people. So if you have a lot of people that think that way, you're not going to get them to choose a mask.
That's a good point.
There's a few comments from the chat. Joe says state employees who are in public-facing roles must still wear masks. It might be helpful to point that out. And also, I mean, Governor Gianforte has said that he will continue to wear a mask. So maybe, you know, if it's good enough for Gianforte, like it's good enough for you. Chani says, is it possible to leverage the CDC time limits and distance recommendations? And we'll maybe come back to that. Joe said, state employees must wear masks in any shared space, though they are not required to wear them at their desk if they don't share office space. And Martha said, we have been explaining to people that what we will see happen if we let people in without masks right now. If we had to close, we would not be able to serve the community and keep our commitment to taxpayers. And Chani had another question. Could you have mask required hours or open early and specific hours for the elderly / at-risk patrons who need others to be wearing masks? So Chani, that's a really great option, at least for protecting patrons. I know in Denise's specific case, that wouldn't necessarily be helpful for her staff who would have to perhaps work the hours where masks aren't required. And then back to your question about, is it possible to leverage the CDC time limits and distance recommendations? I mean, of course, those are always the best places to refer people to in terms of COVID information. But I think with the February directive and also the January directive, where they got rid of some of the capacity limitations and hour limitations, I'm not sure how much weight the CDC directives would have for some folks. And I mean, I think you all might have a better sense of that, but yeah, it might be a toss-up in terms of that. Martha says, I think that also it's important to repeat back to people what their concerns are. For us, we've been telling people that we would never want to trample on anyone's rights, but we have a taxpayer service that we need to be able to continue to deliver. And that's a really important point as well. Another solution I remember hearing from an earlier COVID meetup, which this might be a little radical, but it seemed to work. And I don't remember which library this was, but they actually installed a doorbell, or like I mean, I think it was something where the door could only be open from the inside. So you had to have a mask in order to be able to enter the building. Because I think the difficulty is when someone is in a space already and they're not wearing a mask. And then you have to have that sometimes uncomfortable conversation with a patron, asking them to put a mask on. But I think I remember this library saying that the doorbell kind of got rid of all of that because they couldn't come in unless they had a mask. So I know that's also not logistically or physically possible for all places, but maybe something to consider. Velociraptor Prime said, what rights do library staff have to feel safe at work? Has OSHA addressed this concern? And I have not heard anything on this end. If anyone else has.
Drop a link in the chat. I haven't had time to look at it, but it is OSHA's COVID FAQs, and one of them is where can employers find general information about and requirements for protecting workers. So I'll just drop it in there. That might be helpful because that is a possible reason you could use, is that this is about protecting your staff who may be at high risk. I doubt that it's going to be 100% black and white though, even though it's from OSHA.
Yeah, and I do know that there has been talk of passing legislation to protect business owners and organizations from COVID liability. And I'm not sure if that has if that's passed or what those bills have looked like and how that might interact with bigger umbrella.
I believe that one passed and was signed by the governor.
Guidelines either. And Suzanne just put into the chat, the New York Times has a map showing risk level by county. So that's another tool that you can use to sort of evaluate things.
And I do, Abby Dooley is such a great, she's a lawyer at heart. She reminded me, OSHA doesn't cover government workers.
Oh, okay.
And I had forgotten about that. So that is not actually an option, unfortunately, for you to lean on. You're probably, if you're in a community that's very strongly anti-mask, Flathead County, I would say, might fall into that category as well. So I do think that some of what Martha's been posting will be very helpful for you.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I've decided now to just like talk with my voice.
Yay!
But yeah, in our experience, protecting, staff safety and high risk, most of the people who are anti-mask just disagree that there's an issue. They're not feeling worried, or they don't agree that there's risk to staff. And so what we found is that, figuring out what it is that they are concerned about, and mostly, at least around here, it's personal freedom and choice. And, repeating that back to them, that it's really important that we don't trample on anyone's rights. We would never want to do that. And then listing out kind of like what we think would happen if we were to take away our mask policy. And that would, really prevent us from providing services. And most of the time we're able to move people from like, I don't know, a hell no to, oh, I don't like it, but okay. And it's really been helpful to do that as a strategy. And that is find out what it is that's bothering them about it. Also, one other thing is that Connie has really done a great job of personalizing accommodations for people and really asking for like more and more and more feedback. Like, what am I missing? What am I missing? Is there something I can do that I haven't thought of yet? And she's made special arrangements for people who have, reasons that they can't wear the mask, or, different accommodations that they need that we don't already have in place.
Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing, Martha.
Mhm.
Yeah, a couple other comments. Suzanne says, Ravalli County is listed as extremely high risk on the New York Times tool. And Abby says, we are hoping to take the line of none of our staff have gotten COVID since we reopened in June, and we want to keep it that way. We want to stay open, and if COVID goes through the staff, then we'll have to be closed, and they won't get to use the library during that time. Hopefully it works. Joey also said, we always begin with, we all know masks are very controversial, but, and that opens the discussion. And that's a really good point. And if Martha or anyone else has like actual like talking phrases that you can use to kind of help people engage, please put that into the chat. I found it to be very helpful to have like a script sometimes, because these conversations can be really uncomfortable. And if you have things that you've practiced to fall back on, that can be really helpful in a pinch. Jennifer also said Flathead County is very high risk according to the map. And Martha said, check our Facebook. We posted a letter today. And Chani says, and practice the script with your staff. So, if you do pass a policy and you do expect some backlash, that might be something that you need to dedicate time to training staff on in terms of how to approach those conversations. And yeah, feel free to write out a script and like edit it every week depending on your interactions and what seems to be working and what isn't working. Yvonne says, Rosebud County Library struggled to get people to wear masks even with the mandate in place. We even locked the doors so people couldn't come in unless they had a mask on properly. They'd get in and still continue to unmask when no one was looking. It was a daily fight which caused exhaustion for staff. How are other libraries requiring masks, dealing with the fatigue caused by enforcement?
And I would say, well, people are maybe typing. I think that Martha said something that's really important, and she said we listen to what the underlying concern is. And I've heard from other libraries that that simple act goes a long way to de-escalating, because people feel completely out of control in their lives, and whether they wear a mask or not is something they can control. And so it's kind of like they're just afraid, I mean, we all are kind of struggling with all the changes in our lives. And so I have heard other library staff say that just listening, using humor, at least de-escalates the situation and maybe can shift the conversation.
Pam also said that many are doing just curbside probably for this reason. So they're still providing services, but not doing it in person. Chani says, first step in mediation training is figuring out the emotional need behind the action. Thanks, Joe. So that's a really good point. Again, any other tips or phrases or techniques, feel free to share in the chat. Any other comments or questions about this? Val says, we have not really had any issues with masks. Yay! We have been requiring them early on. So that's great to hear that some communities aren't having big struggles with this, which is really great. Any other comments, questions?
I will just add, we posted the letter today. We were really scared to do this actually, but we posted the letter to like an information sharing group here in the Flathead that's known to be pretty inflammatory. It's a common place for like big fights to go down on Facebook, and it's called Flathead 411, but it has 20,000 people in the group. And we knew that probably a lot of people who disagreed with us were in that group. And so we actually went there and posted the letter there today, which was terrifying. They turned off comments after like 20 minutes or half an hour or something because it was just getting to be a lot. But I will say, super pleasantly surprised to see we had like 105 positive likes and hearts and like cares, and only 12 or so dislikes or angry faces.
That's great.
So, take a look at Connie's letter that she wrote, because it really did. I do think that it helps people understand that we're not trying to do something partisan or take away people's freedoms. And we're not out to be one of them.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Martha. And that is a very brave thing to do. So kudos to you and everyone for being that brave and taking up that space and engaging in that way. And that's really great to hear that, there were some positive reactions to it. A few other comments. Yvonne said, we got plenty of de-escalation practice in the last few months. It's just tiring to do daily, which for sure. Sandra says, I have big struggles in one branch, but not the other. I just give people the option. You can wear a mask, or I can bring out anything you want to your car. So yeah, perhaps approaching it from like here are your choices. You can either wear this mask or you can do this other thing, and I can do curbside for you. Abby says, just found out that Lake County commissioners decided to keep the mask requirement in place and reevaluate in 30 days. Yay! Joe says, try to remember easing. So E, check your emotions. A, ask for permission, such as, can we discuss this a bit? Be specific. Don't use always or never. Use I statements. N, keep it neutral. And G, show genuine curiosity. And Debbie said, isn't it sad that librarians have to be brave in order to keep safe? And I mean, yes, I wish that circumstances were certainly different and that it didn't have to come down to like an either or any sort of like polarization. But it is also very inspiring to hear all the different ways that librarians and folks have been brave in this time and have really kind of stepped up. Joey says, just acknowledging their concerns helps, for sure. Joe says, we are building up our emotional intelligence, though. That's maybe the good side. And Sandra says, I'm going to try to add that acknowledging part. Okay. So any other comments, questions before we move on? And even if we move on, we can always come back to this topic if there's something else that people want to discuss. But maybe let's go on for now. So another thing I wanted to bring up was just vaccine distribution and availability. And for this, I'd be kind of curious to see what you all have been hearing from patrons. I'm sure that some of you have gotten questions about what's going on with the vaccines, not even like what is the vaccine or anything, but just like where is it, how can I get it, how do I sign up, who's going to contact me, that kind of logistical stuff. So there are a few resources here that we've listed. So there's the local vaccine availability contact map. This is on the DPHHS website, and it has a list of like who you contact in a county to get information about the vaccine. So if anyone is coming in with questions about that, I would recommend pointing them to there and being like, this is the phone number, this is the email, this is the website that you need to call in order to find out more information about what's happening in this county. So you can point people towards that. On the Montana COVID vaccine page, they have some information on there. So you can direct people there. The COVID dashboard, which has now an extra tab that's been added that's keeping track of how many doses of the vaccine have been given and then how many Montanans have been fully vaccinated. And then they also have a breakdown by county. So you can see in Lewis and Clark County, this many doses have been administered and these many people have been fully vaccinated with the vaccine. So that's more just kind of like tracking progress. That's not going to help people in terms of getting the vaccine. But that's just another tracking tool that people can use. And just main thing is check your local county health department for specific information. I think a lot of things are changing. A lot of things are being announced kind of quickly and spots are going and, you know, there's not a lot of appointment availability. So unfortunately, I think people are going to have to be proactive about this. I think in some cases, the vaccine is being brought to people and given to people, and people are being contacted about where to go. But I think for the most part, people are going to have to be more proactive in order to make sure that they're getting vaccinated. And I have heard, I'm not sure how relevant this is in Montana. I have heard in other states, though, that people have had success with calling around and asking for standby wait lists. So if someone is really trying to get a vaccine, this is of course not a guarantee at all. But if they can't get an active appointment, they can ask to be put on a wait list and contacted if someone doesn't show up for their appointment as originally scheduled. So I'm going to go ahead and put all of these links into the chat box. And if you have any questions, feel free to bring those up. And then Megan said, I called my health department today and put my name on the wait list for phase 2. So. Okay. Any questions about that? I do think, and I think maybe this was a conversation we had in our Teams group. I do think that most counties have like a phone number that you can call, but I think in some places signups for appointments and the like are done online. So that might be a way that libraries can help if you're part of the hotspot program, or if you have Wi-Fi, you can let people know that they can sign up for their appointment at the library. Hopefully, you know, they'll provide other options for people to sign up because not everyone has an internet connection. Jennifer says we have a phone number and a form that can be filled out on flatheadhealth.org. So, yeah. Any questions about that or any questions from your patrons that have come in that you'd like to post to the group? Oh, I'm sorry, that's my roommate's cat in case you heard him. Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and move on to the next topic, but if you do have any questions, feel free to bring those up. The next thing to talk about is the REALM study. So again, this is the Reopening archives, libraries, and museums study that IMLS and I think OCLC were sponsoring, and they were looking at the attenuation, aka the disappearance of the COVID virus on various kinds of materials and various kinds of environments, et cetera, et cetera. So they just released the results for rounds 7 and 8. And I'll put the link in for those study results in the chat box, and I would highly recommend that you go and look at that yourself. But some main takeaways. For test 7, they had various materials at colder temperatures, so 34 to 36 degrees Fahrenheit, and test 8 was at warmer temperatures, so 83 to 84 degrees. It was in stacked, unstacked, some with just like a average humidity level, and they were checked multiple times over 9 days. So they found that the colder temperatures did preserve the virus presence longer. And even after 9 days, there was a still significant amount of the virus on the materials. At the warmer temperatures, those attenuated faster. So even after 9 days with the warmer materials, there is nothing really detectable. So obviously, everyone has different circumstances. Not everyone is going to have the exact same lab environment as the Realm study, but I think from this study and also from other studies in general, cold weather does seem to preserve the virus a little bit longer. So that's just something to keep in mind. I'm not sure if they're going to continue with more rounds of studies, but if they do, they send out emails and we'll be sure to let you know. But again, I would recommend looking at the results, and you can also check back on previous results as well. So let me stick that in the chat box. And let's see. Our last topic was just post-pandemic space planning. And there's this article here from Medium that Tracy had shared with me, and that she wanted to talk a little bit with you all. And I know that post-pandemic seems like a long way away, but we're gonna get there eventually. And so this is a topic to start considering, I suppose.
And it was actually Pam Henley who found this. It's a very practical article. Obviously, you know, each of your libraries is different, and some of you will have the luxury of doing things within the article, and others of you might be too small. But I really liked it because it kind of pointed out that for a lot of us, after the pandemic, we're still probably going to be wanting more social distancing. We're going to be used to sort of one-way traffic and so forth. And this article is kind of talking about how to look at your library and design it in such a way that you kind of accommodate those needs and also can give your library a little bit of a refresh. There's also a podcast that I'm going to share with you that isn't actually for libraries specifically, although the woman who did this was, in fact, a librarian, and she specializes in looking at what makes consumers want to use certain products. But as I was listening to the podcast, even though it's like a different industry, I was really struck by the applicability to libraries. And she talked about things like cleanliness and like the curbside services and the personal delivery and so forth. And so I just kind of wanted us to maybe make lemonade a little bit and think about ways that library services can be modified for the future to kind of accommodate people's changing behaviors and habits. And I thought both of these were just kind of a good read and a quick listen to just give you some ideas for things that you might want to do in your library to just kind of prepare for a post-pandemic world. And I think a lot of them would work even right now. So thanks, Amelia, for giving me that time.
Of course. And if any of you, I imagine that this will probably be a growing topic of conversation as time goes on. So feel free to share anything that you hear of in regards to this, because I think this will eventually become a bigger concern for all of us to think about and discuss. So, let's see. Any other comments, questions about that? And Tracy put the link into the chat box about that. Joe said, is there any funding with the next COVID relief for the infrastructure builds that might be used for library renovations?
There
And
is work on a federal bill to help with library infrastructure. And I'm sorry, I don't know where it is at in the process. I'm not sure that it's in the COVID relief itself. It's an actual library infrastructure bill. It's pretty
Yeah, I
exciting.
couldn't remember hearing something. And so that's why I was asking. I couldn't remember where I'd heard rumors about potential library sort of a building fund kind of thing. But you'll let us know, won't you, Tracy, when you hear?
Yeah, or it might be Jenny, with her being on the chief officers of state library, and she often gets that information faster. But yes, we will definitely share that news. That would be a good piece of news.
that would be great. Okay. Well, that was it for today. Are there any other questions, comments? Additionally, if anyone just wants to share like something fun or good that's happened in the past month, sometimes it's nice to end on a high note. I'll go ahead and stop the recording.